A proud, pious, and ultimately rather pathetic figure, Charles I absorbed his father's delusions about the divine right of kings, with disastrous consequences. His stubbornness in religious matters and his attempts to turn himself into an absolute monarch and rule without parliament eventually pitched the country into civil war, culminating in his trial and execution for treason. England was divided against itself as it had never been before, and to his countrymen the dead king was either a blameless martyr or a bloody tyrant who had met with his just deserts. Charles I was born November 19, 1600, at Dunfermline Palace, Fife, to King James I, the son of Mary Queen of Scots, and Anne of Denmark. King Charles did not exactly enjoy or was motivated to perform his duties as the king. I suppose he comfortably fit into the role of the spare when his oldest brother was alive, Henry. When Henry died on November 6, 1612, from typhoid, Charles became the heir to his father's throne. And on March 27, 1625, Charles's father died of a stroke, making Charles the next King of England, Scotland, France, and Ireland. Soon after, on June 13, 1625, Charles married Henrietta Maria, daughter of King Henry IV of France, in retaliation against Spain, an enemy of France. Henrietta was a practicing Catholic, so she wasn't exactly popular with Charles's Protestant subjects, and he allowed for the practice of high church religious rituals which did not sit well with Parliament, who favored the low church practices. In other words, they, Parliament, did not approve of the use of prayer books and placing importance on rituals. This was, in my opinion, the beginning of the division between Charles and Parliament. Charles was a king who believed that because he was king, he should be able to hold absolute power. He held on to this belief because his father, James I, raised him to believe that kings have a divine right to rule. They are chosen by God to rule, and therefore, anyone who opposes his way is committing a sin against God. He believed that he did not need Parliament, and so he ignored the power and rights of them. Charles wanted to have more of a dictatorship type of government. He attempted to remove Parliament, and so they prepared for war. War broke out between 1639 to 1646, when Charles is forced to surrender to the Scots and Parliament. Oliver Cromwell, the leader of Parliament's military, imprisoned Charles in the old Tudor royal apartments at Hampton Court Palace, but he escaped only to be recaptured and moved to Carisbrooke Castle on the Isle of Wight. Charles was presented with opportunities to negotiate peace and, of course, acknowledge Parliament and their rights. Charles, however, known to be a very stubborn man, refused. He was tried for high treason and for other offenses against the kingdom. During his trial in London, January 2, 1649, he refused to plead and stated that monarchs only answer to God. His refusal to plead was taken as guilty, and Charles was beheaded on January 30th, 1649, outside of the banqueting house in Whitehall. His final words before the axe came down were, "I go from a corruptible to an incorruptible crown, where no disturbance can be, no disturbance in the world." Charles I is buried at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. If you're wondering what happened to his wife Henrietta and his 9 children, one of them being the future King Charles II, they fled in exile. In 1661, Charles II returned from exile and was recognized as King of England, even though he had already been crowned King of Scotland back in 1651. Now, again, I realize that today, January 30th, is the anniversary of Charles I's death. Again, not intended on my end. So this episode will be dedicated to him, his love of art, because it was said he would prefer to indulge in art than indulge in duty. Moving on to where you could go to get a glimpse of the ghost of Charles I, accounts of his appearing include 2 locations at Windsor, the library, and in the Cannon's house within the grounds of Windsor. It's also been said that Charles I's coffin was draped in black, when all of a sudden the clear blue sky went from still to a sudden blizzard, changing the top of the coffin from black to completely white, which people took to symbolize the innocence of the king. Well, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to royally hit that subscribe button, like and share my episodes, and make sure to respectfully comment below. And until next time, as always, keep loving history and stay curious. Bye.